Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Unfortunately, wide receiver Calvin Austin III is expected to miss several weeks, according to a report from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Jerry Dulac. So today on the show, we're going to talk about some potential replacement options at wide receiver 2 for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the next few weeks while Calvin gets better from that shoulder injury. We'll talk about some in-house options. We'll talk about free agent options. We'll talk about some trade options as well today. So buckle in here for some more wide receiver speculation here on Steelers Talk. But before we get into the content today, if the con artist strikes and he ends up making a move for a wide receiver, whether it's a trade, whether it's a free agency signing, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel for our breaking news coverage. If it's a big enough name like Chris Olave or Jakobi Meyers, we'll probably go live for that, but if it's kind of a smaller name, whatever, we'll probably just get a breaking news video out to you guys. Whenever the Steelers make a big move, we get you breaking news coverage on this channel. So if you never want to miss a big move, make sure you guys click that subscribe button right now and join the Steelers Talk family. So first, let's talk about the in-house options to replace Calvin Austin III that already exist on the Steelers roster. They're already on the active roster or on the practice squad. And what options make the most sense for this football team if they don't want to go out and make a trade right now or make a free agency signing? And I think the reality and the truth of the matter here is that Calvin Austin III's role in this Steelers offense is going to be difficult to replace. Calvin was kind of that man-to-man separator early on in the season, and Aaron Rodgers would lean on him quite a bit when he had to throw the ball down the field. We saw that he had that game-winning touchdown versus the New England Patriots. Of course, had a touchdown against the Jets. Has had a couple of third and long completions versus man as well. He's been kind of the guy that's been the separator on this Steelers offense to this point in the season. Him being out of the lineup now means that somebody else is going to have to step up into that role if the Steelers want to avoid teams from just pressing them into oblivion and playing press man coverage pretty much exclusively over the next few weeks while Calvin is out of the lineup. Now, I think many people's first inclination here would be to think that Roman Wilson is going to get a shot to be the legitimate number 2 wide receiver in this offense while Calvin Austin III is out of the lineup. Mark Caboli, the Steelers insider for the Pat McAfee show, explained why he believes the Steelers will go with Roman Wilson. He said, "I think Roman has to be the guy. The Steelers are still high on him. I mean, they talk him up like he's the second coming of Jerry Rice. He does have the talent right now. He just needs to have the opportunity, and he hasn't had the opportunity. It's too early in the season to go looking for a trade. I would guess it's going to be a lot of Roman Wilson. Give him the first shot." And listen, I don't necessarily disagree with Mark here, and I really do want to believe in Roman Wilson, all right? Theoretically, he does have the skill set to be a legitimate contributor in the Steelers offense. I think that he's got excellent speed, 4.3 speed. He's got really great acceleration. He's got really good hands that he can make catches outside of the frame of his body, uses his hands, not his body, to catch the football. He's a good run blocker as well. But yet they're just not playing him right now, and they haven't been playing him really at all throughout the course of the season. And I think the likely reality of the situation here, guys, is that if Roman Wilson was like lighting it up in practice, or if he was really showing a lot of good things in practice, he'd be getting more opportunities, and he would have gotten more opportunities even before Calvin Austin III ended up getting injured. I mean, to this point, Roman Wilson only has 1 catch on the entire season, and it came pretty much during garbage time when the opposing defense, it was the Seattle week, was playing off coverage, and they just throw a little out route to him. He catches it, and then he gets upended right after. Roman Wilson certainly hasn't had the start to his 2025 campaign that I think a lot of Steelers fans and probably the Steelers themselves were hoping for. Obviously, you spent a 3rd-round pick on him, but honestly, he just hasn't been getting a lot of opportunities, and it doesn't seem like the Steelers trust him all that much at this point, which is really concerning because he's into his 2nd season now. He only got 3 snaps last week versus the Minnesota Vikings, and you would think, Calvin Austin III gets injured in the second half of the Vikings game. Who's next man up? It's it's Roman Wilson, right? No, they put in Scotty Miller as the person to replace Calvin Austin III. Now, maybe they felt like Scotty could run the routes in the offensive game plan and Calvin's role better than Roman could, and maybe that's why Scotty picked up the slack there. But, it's just not – it's pretty concerning where, like, if Roman Wilson was a legit number 2 type receiver in this league and Calvin Austin III goes down, you would think that the Steelers would just automatically put Roman in at that number 2 wide receiver spot. No, they go with Scotty Miller, who had a nice preseason. He's a good backup rotational piece. But let's be honest, man, if Roman Wilson was the real deal, I feel like he would have picked up the slack there and gotten those wide receiver 2 reps, but the Steelers opted to go with Scotty Miller. And let's be honest about Scotty Miller for a second as well, and same thing with Ben Skoranek. I like that they're on this team. I like their specific kind of rotational type of roles that they have here, especially Skoranek as an excellent run-blocking specialist. But they're not starters, all right? They're not legitimate guys, and they're not going to be guys that are going to be consistently beating man-to-man coverage that Aaron Rodgers can depend on like he could with Calvin Austin III. The other guy on this roster that I will say does intrigue me, though, is Isaiah Hodgins. He is a pretty decent short to intermediate route runner. He's got good hands. He can be a contributor to this effort here while Calvin Austin III is out. I think if you're going to be not making a move in free agency or trade, I think the best way to go about it is to try Roman Wilson at wide receiver 2. Give him a couple weeks to see if he can step into that role. And if it's not working out, then maybe make a deal before the deadline in early November. And then maybe play Isaiah Hodgins and Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller in kind of like rotational roles and kind of have that wide receiver 3 role be a committee over the next few weeks. But like I said, guys, Roman Wilson's lack of usage to this point in the season is very concerning to me if we're going to be asking him to pick up the slack in this very important wide receiver 2 role in the Steelers offense as the man-to-man separator. And the reality of the situation is, guys, I think that an outside addition makes sense. If the Steelers want to go out and make a move for a receiver, now may be the time to really get aggressive and make this move happen. All right, if you're planning on adding a wide receiver before the deadline anyways, why wait a couple of weeks to make that happen? Get aggressive, get that receiver that you want to get in here earlier, and get aggressive to go get that guy in a Steelers uniform. So coming up here, I've got 15 potential wide receiver targets that are somewhat realistic for the Pittsburgh Steelers to go pursue before the NFL trade deadline this year. But before we get into those wide receiver targets, let me know down there in the comment section, should Pittsburgh make a move at wide receiver this week? Give me a yes if you think they should add a wide receiver to this roster, or type no if you think they should stick with Roman Wilson and what they have on the roster right now. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And while I tell you about Prize Picks today, simply give me a yes or no to today's pinned question. And with that, I have word from our sponsor at Prize Picks. And you and I, we both make decisions every single day, right? But on Prize Picks, being right with your decisions can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Football season is finally here, and you better believe I'll be getting in my Prize Picks lineups all season long. Prize Picks is simple to play, guys. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks also puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks also offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And a new feature from Prize Picks that I absolutely love is injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks will not count it as a loss. So here's my Prize Picks projection for this week here in professional football. I'm taking the more on Justin Herbert passing yards, the more on Quentin Johnston receiving yards. I'm taking the more on Zach Ertz receiving yards as well. You guys can download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So first, I want to go over some potential wide receiver targets that are being floated around on Steelers Twitter that I think will not be realistic options. These will be either close to or literally 0% chance of the Steelers getting these receivers. We'll start with Tyreek Hill, who unfortunately dislocated his knee last night on Monday Night Football. He is out for the season. He might be out for more than just this season. He was probably going to miss a decent portion of next season because apparently he's torn a bunch of ligaments in his knee. So hopefully Tyreek has a full and speedy recovery. But if you're hoping for the Cheetah to be a Pittsburgh Steeler this year, that dream officially ended last night. And then I've also been hearing a lot of rumors surrounding A.J. Brown because he is a bit disgruntled with the Philadelphia Eagles right now. But plain simply, guys, the Eagles are not selling this year. They're 4-0 to start the year. They're going to find ways to get A.J. Brown the football. And then even if the Eagles do end up trading A.J. Brown, and let's say he demands a trade out of there before the deadline, I really don't think the Steelers are going to be willing to give up the amount of draft capital it's going to take to get a guy like A.J. Brown. He's a top 5 receiver in the entire National Football League, in my opinion. You have to give up at least a first-round pick for him, and maybe even more than that, and the Steelers are not really willing to give up that first-round pick. They want to draft a quarterback next year. That is their plan right now, to draft their future franchise quarterback with their first-round pick in 2026. And you're going to have to send that pick to Philly to get A.J. Brown. So there's a close to 0% chance A.J. Brown becomes a Pittsburgh Steeler. And then another guy that we've talked about a lot on this show, but is probably not a realistic possibility at this point, is Romeo Doubs, who's having a fantastic season with the Green Bay Packers. He just had a 3-touchdown performance versus the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. And I know they're going to be getting Jaden Reed back, and I know they're going to get Christian Watson back, and they already have Matthew Golden, who they drafted in the first round this year. But I think that Doubs has shown himself to be a very valuable member of that wide receiver rotation in Green Bay, and I don't think they're going to be all that willing to let him go at this point in time. So for my list today, I have 3 tiers of wide receiver targets, all right? We'll start with the first tier, and we'll go more in depth on these guys because these are really the guys that I would really be happy with if the Steelers were able to get them. I call it the ideal fits tier, and we'll start with Jakobi Meyers. And I think that this one is actually pretty darn realistic, guys. I love the fit between Meyers' play style and what the Steelers need in terms of a guy that can get open versus man coverage, has really good hands. He's great over the intermediate middle of the field. He's an absolute demon in that regard. And I think he's one of the most underrated receivers in the National Football League today. The Raiders season, I think, is pretty much lost at this point, guys. They've lost 3 in a row. Their defense is not good. Geno Smith is turning the football over a lot, and Meyers has already asked out of Las Vegas. He requested a trade before the season began, and the Raiders still haven't given him a contract extension to this point. So if they continue to siphon off games and all these different things, I could see Jakobi Meyers being made available for trade by the trade deadline by the Las Vegas Raiders. And in my opinion, like I said, guys, Jakobi is a perfect and ideal wide receiver 2 for this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. He run blocks. He's got really good size. He's got terrific hands. He has an over 60% career contested catch rate. That is excellent. He's also decent after the catch. Like, he just brings a lot to the table, and he's the type of guy that I think Aaron Rodgers can develop a good amount of trust in early because he's got such good hands. So I think he's one of the more underrated receivers in the game. I kind of put him in the same category. He's not as good as these guys, but he's in the same category physically as guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jackson Smith and Jigba. You're getting a slightly reduced version of those guys in Jakobi Meyers. He's an awesome football player, and to pair him up with DK Metcalf would be absolutely fantastic. Another guy that I would be thrilled to get here in Pittsburgh is Chris Olave, the New Orleans Saints wide receiver here. And, listen, man, the Saints season is over. They're 0-4. They're going to be doing a fire sale at the trade deadline. I think everybody sees it. They're going to be trading a bunch of players on defense and offense. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave could be on the block. Rashid Shaheed, who we'll talk about later in the show. They got a bunch of players that they're probably going to let go of for the right price. And, Olave, what I like about him is that he's still a very young player. So, like, if the Steelers can get him and he can stay healthy, he's going to be a premier route runner for a very long time. He can be a long-term solution in terms of pairing him up with DK Metcalf for the next half decade at least. So that would be an awesome solution. But the concern with Olave, if you get him, it is the concussion concerns. He's had a number of concussions, some really bad ones in his career. And there is some concern that if he has another one or if he has 2 more, he might be forced maybe even to like an early retirement. It really is getting to that point where you wonder, if he gets another concussion or 2, you wonder about how healthy Chris Olave is going to be when he turns 40. Like, it really has been an issue for him, and that is the risk with trading for a guy like Chris Olave. But in a win-now season with a guy that is still very young and on his rookie contract, if you want to get a legitimate 1A to maybe DK Metcalf's 1B in this Steelers offense, Chris Olave is a premier route runner and would be awesome here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then this one, I would say the last 3 on this first tier are a little bit less likely than Meyers and Olave, but we'll start with Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, like I said, admittedly, this one is not the most likely, all right? If the Vikings can turn things around, if they win some more football games, etc., I think that, they're not going to be selling at the deadline. We'll see if they do, but it's definitely a possibility. They're sitting at 2-2 right now. We saw how bad that offensive line was against the Steelers' pass rush last week. Carson Wentz is certainly not fantastic, and J.J. McCarthy, he's played 8 quarters in the NFL, and for 7 of those quarters, he looked like the worst quarterback in the National Football League. So This is certainly a situation where Minnesota could be looking to sell at the deadline if they keep losing football games. And then also, Jordan has kind of been getting on the Minnesota Vikings' nerves. Multiple seasons here where he's had to deal with suspensions and he's been dealing with, stupid stuff with motor vehicles and all this different stuff. And the Minnesota Vikings, you can tell, are getting a little bit peeved off. And you're already paying Justin Jefferson all that money. Do they really feel like Jordan Addison, who might be asking for a new contract extension next offseason, is worth keeping around, especially if the Steelers would offer them a second or maybe third round pick to be able to exchange him out. But listen, man, I think that most Steelers fans would agree with me here. If you're a Pitt Panther fan, you would agree. Bringing Addison home would be an absolute dream. He won the Blitnikoff Award, which is the award for the best receiver in college football. Back when he was coming out there in Pitt, then he goes to USC, then he goes into the draft, he gets drafted by the Vikings. But, this has been somebody that I have really wanted to see in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform in a very long time, or for a very long time, I should say. And if the Steelers can make it a possibility, I think that this is certainly a possibility that I would at least explore if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then we get to Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans. Dan Graziano from ESPN linked Ridley to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a recent segment that he did where he linked 6 big-name wide receivers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ridley is somebody that has multiple years on his contract. He's a great deep threat, and kind of like the Saints and Raiders, the Tennessee Titans season is over at 0-4. All right? It's already done. All right, so, do they see Calvin Ridley as a long-term option for them? He's had a slow start to the season this year. His chemistry with Cam Ward hasn't been fantastic to start, and he could possibly request a trade or maybe even demand a trade out by the deadline. We'll see what happens here, but if the Steelers can get him, this would certainly be somebody I'm interested in. He's a great deep threat. He's a really good route runner, some of the best true speed in the National Football League, especially for a guy at his size. And then another one that I'll put on here, maybe a little bit less likely again, is DJ Moore. Moore, good route runner. He at certain points in his career has been a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. Now, Chicago, I would say, has some more losing to do. They're on a 2-game winning streak. If they continue to win, they're not going to be selling at the deadline, and this possibility becomes essentially dead. But if they lose a bunch of games here before the trade deadline, which is at the beginning of November, I think it's November 10th, if things go south for Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and the Bears, you never know. There's been some reports that Ben Johnson isn't too happy with DJ Moore's practice habits. So is it a possibility that he could be made available by the trade deadline? I would say it's a possibility, but in terms of guys that you're going to be trading for immediately, if so you're looking for someone you could trade for right now, DJ Moore is certainly not on that list. Now make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you'd be stoked for the Pittsburgh Steelers to add a big name wide receiver before the trade deadline this year, clicking that thumbs up icon is the easiest way to help out our channel, guys. It boosts the YouTube algorithm so that this video gets in front of more Steelers fans, and it really does help us out. So if you are feeling generous today, click that thumbs up icon if you want the Steelers to get a big name wide receiver. Now we'll go over tier 2 here, which what I would consider as decent pickups. These guys are not long-term necessarily solutions, or fantastic, 1A, 1B type of guys to pair with DK Metcalf, but they can replace Calvin Austin III's role as the number 2 receiver in the Steelers offense. Rashid Shaheed, a true deep threat. If you're looking for a true Calvin Austin III replacement, Shaheed is an excellent punt returner, one of the fastest receivers in the game, one of the best true deep threats in the game. So if you're looking for a true replacement, get more speed on this offense, Shaheed, he's on the final year of his contract there in New Orleans, is certainly an option to keep your eye on. Hollywood Brown is another vertical threat, good route runner. He's being buried a little bit in that Kansas City offense with the emergence of Tyquan Thornton. They're going to be getting Rashee Rice back here soon. Xavier Worthy has ascended into that wide receiver room as well. Then you got Christian Kirk, the Houston Texans receiver. The Steelers are actually interested in trading for Kirk when he was still with Jacksonville last year before his season-ending injury. Kirk is getting buried a little bit in that Texans offense. They've got 2 really good young rookies and Jaden Higgins and then Jalen Noel. And I could certainly see the Texans be sellers here. So Christian Kirk is a name to keep your eye on. Dontayvion Wicks is probably the Packers receiver I think is the most likely to be traded. He's a really good route runner. He's got a big body so he can run block a little bit, but he doesn't have great hands. That is the big bugaboo with him. So you're going to have to deal with some drops if you trade for him. And then Tyler Lockett. He's been buried in that Tennessee offense to start. He's certainly regressing physically. So he would be kind of a 1-year rental type of guy, but certainly in that mold of a Calvin Austin III type of player known as a good route runner, good deep threat, that sort of player. Then we get to my final tier here, and these are some possibilities I could see happening, but they're certainly not my favorite. And I call this tier the at least we tried tier, because it's like you're getting somebody in there, but I'm not sure if I love these options. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the Steelers were interested in him when he was a free agent. Maybe you do like a late round pick swap to pair him up with Aaron Rodgers. Again, it's a possibility, I guess. Then Diontae Johnson and Odell Beckham Jr. are probably the two free agents that I think this team would consider bringing back. I don't know what the relationship is between Diontae and the team, but they did trade him away last offseason, so I'm guessing it's not in a terrific place, but he is a route runner that can be that kind of man-to-man separator if that's what the Steelers need right now. Same thing with Odell Beckham Jr. He's not what he once was, but he's good friends with Aaron Rodgers, has some established chemistry with him because they've worked out in the offseason together, but certainly not a fantastic option there. Then Curtis Samuel with the Buffalo Bills, not getting a lot of playing time in Buffalo, but he's a yak threat, could be an option there. And then Alan Lazard has played with Aaron Rodgers before. I think he sucks at football. He's not playing very well in New York right now. I'm sure he would welcome a change of scenery, especially if he gets to play with his buddy Aaron Rodgers. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comment section. Which wide receiver are you hoping that the Steelers add before the trade deadline, if anyone? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. For me, I would be thrilled with either Jakobi Meyers or Chris Olave. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk. I'll be back later this afternoon. Ponzi and I will be going live today, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to have multiple segments of high-quality Steelers coverage for you guys this afternoon. So make sure you guys join us at 5 p.m. Eastern later today. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.